Listen to the story to the end and write your comments. And don't forget to subscribe.
I found out I had a twin sister the day she took everything from me. This story wasn't mine. But I remember it better than most things that were. It was told to me by my friend Evelyn many years ago, when our hands were still steady and the world still seemed full of secrets no one dared name out loud. I remember how she looked when she told it, sitting on my back porch, eyes lost somewhere in the fields, voice low, like she was afraid the story might overhear her and begin again. It happened to her, back in 1955, in a small town in Minnesota, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where secrets rot slowly behind painted doors. Evelyn was 31 when she told me. Married. 2 children. A good life, by most measures. But she carried something inside her, not grief, not guilt exactly. Something worse. A truth no one believed. I'll tell it to you the way she told me. And maybe then you'll understand. Evelyn grew up in a modest white house on the edge of town. Her father was a school superintendent, her mother a woman of strange moods and old jewelry. They weren't affectionate people. Her childhood was a quiet thing, full of piano lessons and cold breakfasts. She had always been told she was an only child. She believed that. Until the day she received a letter. It arrived without a return address. Inside, a single sheet of thin paper and a black and white photograph. The photo was of her, or so she thought, at first. But the date on the back said 1930, and Evelyn hadn't been born until 1931. The handwriting beneath the photo simply read, "You should know who you are." She showed it to her husband, Charles. He laughed. "Maybe your mother had a look-alike cousin," he said. "Or a prank." But Evelyn couldn't stop looking at the woman in the photo. Same cheekbones. Same eyes. Same faint scar above the left eyebrow, a scar Evelyn had always thought was hers alone, from when she fell off her tricycle at age 6. That night, she called her mother. Asked carefully, politely, about the photo. Silence. Then her mother said, "Don't dig where you're not ready to be buried." And hung up. That's when the dreams began. She dreamed of a hallway she didn't recognize. White walls. Screaming behind closed doors. The smell of antiseptic. She'd wake up sweating, certain that she'd been there before, but unable to say how. She stopped sleeping. Started pacing the halls of her house at night, her robe tied too tight around her waist. Charles noticed. The children did too. "You need rest," Charles told her one morning, kissing her forehead. "You're seeing shadows." But Evelyn wasn't so sure anymore. Because the next day, another envelope came. This one had no photo. Only one sentence. "We were born together. You were kept. I was thrown away." She began investigating. Quietly. Carefully. Her father had died 2 years earlier, so she went through his old boxes in the attic. School files, ledgers, photographs. In one of them, she found a birth certificate. Or rather, 2. Both dated September 12, 1931. Evelyn Rose. Lillian May. Twins. The hospital was 3 towns over. A Catholic place. Strict, secretive. She drove there the next day, alone, telling Charles she was going to visit an old friend. The records office was run by a nun with paper-thin skin and wary eyes. Evelyn asked for her birth record. The nun squinted. You were already here, she said. Last week. No, Evelyn said, her mouth suddenly dry. The nun gave her a strange look. You asked for copies of both files. I remember the dress. Evelyn left without saying another word. She drove back in silence, her hands wide on the wheel. Her house no longer felt like hers. Every room too neat, too quiet. The mirrors seemed to watch her. She didn't eat that night. The next morning, a woman came to the door. She was identical. Same face. Same hair. Same posture. But her smile was wrong. Too wide. Too deliberate. Hello, the woman said. Evelyn stared. Lillian? The woman tilted her head. You can call me Lily. Then, calmly, like it was the most natural thing in the world, we have a lot to talk about. They sat in the parlor. Tea grew cold between them. Lily told her the story. She had been sent away. Left in a convent for delicate children. Spent her youth in and out of institutions. Had never known why, until a nurse slipped her a file with Evelyn's name. I found you, she said. Isn't that amazing? Evelyn nodded slowly, afraid to speak. Lily smiled. But don't worry. I'm not here to ruin anything. I just want to get to know my sister. Charles came home during the conversation. He froze in the doorway. Evelyn laughed nervously. This is my sister. We just found each other. Charles looked confused, then charmed. Lily was warm, bright, full of stories. She stayed for dinner. Then for the weekend. Then, she didn't leave. She started borrowing Evelyn's clothes. Tucking the children in at night. Laughing louder than Evelyn ever had. People began mistaking them. Once, Charles called her Evie in the hallway, but he wasn't looking at Evelyn. Evelyn started forgetting things. Or so they told her. Milk in the oven. Car left running. Children scared. She had no memory of any of it. Then came the pills. Charles said the doctor prescribed them. To help with the nerves. She took them. She didn't want to be a burden. Until one morning, she woke up strapped to a bed. White walls. Antiseptic. Room 7. A nurse came in. Good morning, Lillian, she said. No, Evelyn whispered. No, I'm Evelyn. The nurse smiled kindly. That's what you said yesterday. And the day before. She screamed until her throat gave out. No one came. That was where Evelyn stopped, the first time she told me. She lit a cigarette with shaking fingers, stared out at the field, and said. She took my life so easily. And what kills me is. I handed it to her. Because I wanted to believe she was my sister. I asked her what happened next. She looked at me with a strange smile. I'll tell you next time. But I'll say this, sometimes the scariest thing isn't losing your life. It's watching someone else wear it better than you ever did. When Evelyn told me the rest, she didn't look at me. She spoke like she was talking to the wind. Like if she looked me in the eye, it might all become too real again. This is the part where most people stop believing, she said. Because they can't imagine what it's like to lose your name. Your face. Your reflection. And then she told me how they broke her. She woke in a white room that smelled like bleach and old sorrow. A high window let in pale morning light. The bed beneath her squeaked when she moved. Her wrists were strapped to the rails with soft leather bands. There was a nameplate on the wall. Room 7. Lillian May Carter. A nurse entered, young, red-haired, tired eyes. "Good morning, Lillian," she said cheerfully. "My name is Evelyn," Evelyn replied. Her voice cracked, dry from sleep, from fear. The nurse frowned gently. "We've been through this, sweetie. Let's not start our day confused." She loosened one strap, checked Evelyn's pulse, then poured 2 pills into a paper cup. "What is this place?" Evelyn asked. "You're at Meadowridge." She said it like that meant something. "A facility for rest and recovery." Evelyn tried to sit up. "I need to call my husband. My children. I don't belong here." The nurse smiled with professional warmth. "We already called your emergency contact. Your husband is aware you're here." "No," Evelyn snapped. "That wasn't my husband. That was hers. She did this." The nurse's face didn't change. "You had a bad episode, Lillian. But you're safe now." "I'm not Lillian." But the nurse was already gone. The next days blurred together. Pills at breakfast. Group sessions where she was told to share her delusions. Long corridors where other women whispered to themselves. And every time Evelyn protested, fought, cried, it only confirmed what they believed. Or rather, what Lily wanted them to believe. Because Lily had already prepared everything. There were doctor's notes signed Lillian Carter dating back months, all faked, all neatly placed in Evelyn's file. There were witnesses, friends and neighbors, who said Evelyn had been acting strangely. There was even a journal, found at home, filled with writing that wasn't hers, pages of confusion, obsession, paranoia, all in her handwriting, but not from her hand. And then came the photographs. They brought them to her during a therapy session. Photos of Lillian holding her children. Sitting with Charles. Smiling at a birthday party. Only it wasn't Evelyn in those pictures. It was Lily. But the face was the same. And Evelyn had no way to prove otherwise. She screamed. Threw the folder. Cursed them all. And then came the sedation. Back at home, Lily had slipped into her life like a hand into a glove. She wore Evelyn's dresses. Slept in her bed. Kissed Charles goodnight. The children, too young to notice subtle changes, called her mommy without hesitation. Lily braided their hair the wrong way, made pancakes too sweet, forgot bedtime songs, but children forgive so easily. And Charles. He noticed something. But he wanted to believe the lie. Because Lily was more affectionate. More spontaneous. She laughed louder, touched him more. She had an edge that Evelyn never had, a boldness that made him feel younger. Desired. He told himself the institution had helped her. That the woman sleeping beside him was the same one he married, just different somehow. And whenever a sliver of doubt crept in, when she forgot his favorite meal, or called him Charlie when she never had before, she silenced it with lips on his neck and soft lies whispered in the dark. Back in Meadowridge, Evelyn was unraveling. She refused the pills. So they restrained her. She screamed her real name. So they listed her as delusional. She begged for a phone call. They let her dial, once. She dialed home. The phone rang. And then Lily's voice answered. Hello? Evelyn froze. Her mouth opened but no sound came. Hello? Lily repeated. Charles? Evelyn whispered. Please. It's me. A pause. Then Lily said, calmly, coldly. You need to rest, Evelyn. You're not well. Click. The dial tone echoed like a scream. Months passed. They broke her slowly. With kindness. With routine. With white walls and long silences. A psychiatrist named Dr. Belcroft began visiting weekly. He was mild-mannered, balding, spoke with the gentleness of someone used to damaged things. Let's talk about why you want to be Evelyn, he said. Because I am, she whispered. He nodded thoughtfully. Do you think being Evelyn gives you more power than being Lillian? No. I don't want power. I want my life back. But that life is gone, Lillian. You had a break. You hurt people. You scared your children. But you're here now. We can help you build a new life. She stared at him. You think I'm her. I think you're in pain. She began to forget things. Not big things, not at first. But slivers. Names of nurses. The smell of her old soap. The exact color of her daughter's eyes. The drugs made her heavy. Her dreams became full of static. Her hands trembled. She woke one morning and couldn't remember the name of her street. Another morning, she forgot the shape of Charles's smile. That's when she began to write. She stole a pen. Hid scraps of paper in her pillowcase. Every night, she wrote what she could still remember. Names. Dates. Memories. My name is Evelyn Rose Carter. My husband is Charles. My daughter is Lucy. My son is Peter. My sister is Lillian. She is not me. She is pretending. She folded the scraps and tucked them into the hem of her nightgown. I will not disappear, she told herself. And then, one day, a new orderly arrived. His name was William. Young. Nervous. Gentle hands. He found her in the garden one afternoon, hunched in a chair, eyes closed. You okay, ma'am? He asked. She looked up at him. And for the first time in months, she saw kindness that wasn't clinical. My name isn't Lillian, she said quietly. He smiled awkwardly. I know. You said that yesterday too. No, she said. I can prove it. She reached into her nightgown and pulled out a scrap of paper. Shaking, she handed it to him. William glanced at it. My son is Peter, it read. My daughter is Lucy. He frowned. Ma'am, I thought your children were Amy and Michael? She shook her head. That's what she named hers. I named mine. He hesitated. Then slid the paper into his pocket. I'll look into it, he said. She watched him walk away. And for the first time, a sliver of hope returned. Weeks passed. William started asking questions. Quietly. To other staff. He checked her file. Something didn't add up. The earliest entries in her chart were photocopies. Dated oddly. Some signed by a doctor who had retired the year before she was admitted. Then he made a mistake. He asked the head nurse. 3 days later, he was fired. Evelyn never saw him again. She asked about him. The staff said he quit. But she knew. And after that, they watched her more closely. She stopped writing. They searched her room. And she realized there would be no rescue. One night, she stood at the window of room 7 and looked at the stars. She whispered the names of her children. Lucy. Peter. Her hands gripped the windowsill until they bled. And she made herself a promise. If no one will remember me, then I will remember myself. I will keep my name. Even if I'm the only one who does. Evelyn paused her story there. Took a sip of cold tea. Her hands were steady now, but her voice wasn't. She looked at me and said. The scariest thing wasn't being locked away. It was realizing no one wanted me back. And then she said, very quietly. Because by then, they liked her better. When Evelyn told me this part of the story, she looked me square in the face, no tears, no trembling. Just a calm, steely grief that had hardened into her bones over the years. This is when I stopped being Evelyn, she said. Not because they erased me. But because the people I loved let it happen. Her escape wasn't planned. Not really. It came down to a Tuesday morning, a broken keycard, and a thunderstorm. She had just finished her morning pills, or rather, tucked them under her tongue, waited for the nurse to turn, and spit them into her sleeve. She'd been doing that for weeks. She needed clarity, needed her brain to belong to her again. The rain that day came in sideways, slapping the windows with the fury of a war drum. The nurses were scrambling, a leak in Ward C, lights flickering in the south hallway, half the staff called out sick. It was the first time in months no one had eyes on her. William was gone, but someone new had taken his place, a skinny, distracted orderly named Frank who smelled like menthols and never made eye contact. He swiped his keycard to enter room 7 but dropped it on the floor when the lights flickered again. He left it behind. That was his mistake. Evelyn waited 20 minutes. Listened to the footsteps down the hall grow fainter. Then she slipped the card under her blanket and held her breath. She walked out of room 7 at 11:42 a.m. No one stopped her. She wore her hospital gown under a nurse's raincoat she found hanging in the laundry room. Hair tucked up, head down. She walked through the staff corridor, through the side door, and out into the storm. The rain hit her like a baptism. She didn't run. She walked, steady, fast, right into the trees at the edge of the property. Every branch that slapped her face was a gift. Every root that caught her shoe was a reminder, you are still alive. She made it 2 miles before she flagged down a pickup truck. The driver, an old man with nicotine fingers and a quiet stare, looked at her soaked clothes and said nothing. Can you take me to Brookfield? She asked. He nodded. It's a long way. I know. He didn't ask questions. Just turned up the heat and drove. It was dusk when they reached the edge of town. Evelyn thanked him and stepped out. Her shoes squelched on the pavement. Her breath was ragged. Her hands trembled as she stared at her old street. Same trees. Same mailboxes. But her house, looked different. Brighter. Repainted. The porch had new chairs. A bicycle leaned against the steps, a child's bike, pink with streamers. She walked to the sidewalk, stood across the street, and watched. Through the window, she saw them. Charles, Lily, the children. All at the dinner table, laughing. Lily was serving something from a pot. Charles kissed her cheek. Evelyn couldn't breathe. She stood there until the porch light came on. Until Lily walked to the window and saw her. Their eyes met. Lily froze for half a second. Then she smiled. And pulled the curtain shut. Evelyn didn't move. Not even when the porch light turned off. Not even when the door opened and Charles stepped outside. He crossed the street slowly. Stopped a few feet from her. Rain dripped from the porch awning onto his shoulders. He stared. "Evie?" She nodded. He blinked, stunned. Then took a step closer. "Jesus, where have you?" She spoke softly. "You let her take me." He flinched. No. No, I didn't know, she told me you needed help." "You looked her in the eye," Evelyn said. "You knew something was off. And you let her stay." "She was different," he whispered. "But I thought the treatment." "She's not me." Silence. Then, "I know." She stared. He looked down. "I figured it out last winter. The way she talks to the kids, how she folds laundry. It was wrong. Too fast. Too loud." "Then why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you say anything?" He didn't answer. So she asked again. This time, louder. "Why didn't you come for me?" He looked her in the eye. And said the words that would haunt her forever. "Because she's easier." The world tilted. "What?" "You always worried. Always doubted yourself. You needed things to be just so. And she just lets things go. She laughs. She wants me." Evelyn's hands balled into fists. "You knew. You knew it wasn't me. And you chose her." He looked at her with something like shame, but it wasn't enough. "I'm sorry," he said. "No, you're not." And he wasn't. Because he turned. And walked back across the street. Into her house. To her children. To her name. And closed the door behind him. Evelyn stood there for hours. The rain stopped. The streetlights buzzed overhead. She didn't move until morning. She tried to go to the police. They laughed. One officer took pity and offered her coffee. Asked if she had family. Offered to drive her to a shelter. She gave him a name, Evelyn Rose Carter. He checked the system. "That's not you," he said, pointing to her chart. "That's a married woman in good standing. 2 kids. Living at 148, Rosewood Avenue." "I'm that woman," she said. He leaned back. "You sure you're not confusing yourself with someone else?" He meant it kindly. But it felt like a knife. She ended up at a church shelter. Slept 2 nights on a cot in the basement before 2 men came for her. Orderlies. They had her photo. This time, there were no restraints. She went quietly. Back at Meadowridge, they gave her new meds. Stronger. More permanent. A psychiatrist sat her down and said, "You had a psychotic episode, Lillian. You left the facility, created a false identity, and caused a disturbance. But we're not here to punish you. We're here to help." She didn't speak for days. And when she did, it was only to whisper, "I was Evelyn. Not I am. I was." And that's how she lived. For decades. In room 7. She became the woman no one visited. The patient who walked in circles in the garden, mouthing names no one knew. Lucy. Peter. Charles. Me. Sometimes the nurses were kind. Sometimes they changed. Sometimes they read her file and gave her a new label, unresponsive. Delusional. Chronic. But she always remembered. Even when everything else faded. She held on to her name. Like a ghost gripping the last thing tethering it to the world. When Evelyn finished telling me this part, I asked her, "What happened to Lily?" She smiled, bitter and soft. "She got everything." "And Charles?" "He died married to a woman who was never his wife." "And your children?" That smile faded. "They never knew." She told them I died in the hospital. Buried under another name. They visited her every Christmas. Every birthday. Called her Mom. And she was good to them, I think. Better than I would have been. "Do you hate them?" I asked. She shook her head. "No." How could they know? She wore me like a costume. And when a lie is all someone's ever been given, it becomes their truth. This part, Evelyn didn't live to tell me. I pieced it together years after her death, in letters, in whispers, in the quiet unraveling of a family that had lived too long inside a lie. You see, Evelyn didn't get justice. Not the kind we imagine. There were no courtroom revelations. No angry confrontations. No dramatic "I knew it all along." But there was truth. And that, sometimes, is more powerful than revenge. It began in the spring of 1985. Lucy Carter, 33 years old, mother of 2, working as a librarian in Milwaukee, received a letter. The envelope was thin, yellowed. No return address. Her name was written in tight cursive she didn't recognize. Inside, a photograph. A woman in a hospital gown, sitting by a window. Eyes distant. Mouth closed. Face familiar. Too familiar. On the back of the photo was a note. "My name is Evelyn Rose Carter. I am your mother. She stole my life." Lucy laughed at first. Shaky. Uncomfortable. She thought it was a cruel prank. Or a mistake. She showed it to her husband, who squinted and said, "Looks a little like your mom. But older. Worn down." She tucked it in a drawer and tried to forget. But she couldn't. Because the image haunted her. There was something in the eyes. Something real. She pulled out old albums, photos from childhood. Compared smiles. Eyebrows. The line between the front teeth. She found inconsistencies. Tiny ones. But there. And then she remembered the time, she must have been 9, when she called Mom into the kitchen and the woman who turned around had no idea what she was cooking. The time her mother forgot her birthday for the first time and blamed it on being busy. The time her father snapped at her, Don't question your mother like that. The time her grandmother, on Charles's side, had called her mother a stranger in pearls. Back then, Lucy had ignored it all. Now, it began to whisper louder. She drove down to Brookfield. Alone. Her father had passed 3 years earlier. Her mother, Lily, as she'd always known her, was now living in assisted care, memory slipping, moods unpredictable. Lucy hadn't visited in months. But this time, she brought the photo. She showed it to the nurse. "Was this taken here?" Lucy asked. The nurse frowned. "No, ma'am. That's Meadowridge. Across the state." Lucy had never heard of it. But something clicked in her chest. She called Meadowridge that afternoon. "I'm looking for a former patient," she said. Name might be Lillian Carter. Or maybe Evelyn. The woman on the line went quiet. "Finally, I can't release any information without proof of relationship." Lucy hesitated. Then said, "She's my mother." What followed was a maze of paperwork, phone calls, DNA testing, and silence. And then, a file arrived in the mail. 3 inches thick. Inside, over 30 years of records. Notes. Photographs. Medication charts. And a single page, yellowed and creased, that made Lucy's hand shake. "My name is Evelyn Rose Carter. My husband is Charles. My daughter is Lucy. My son is Peter. My sister is Lillian. She is not me. She is pretending." A note at the bottom, found stitched inside hem of nightgown. Destroy? No. Lucy sat on the floor for hours. She wept. Shouted. Laughed. She called her brother, Peter, in Arizona. He didn't believe her, not at first. But then she sent him the file. The next morning, he called, voice trembling. "Oh my God. We buried the wrong woman." They went to Meadowridge together. The staff was polite. Clinical. "She's no longer here," they were told. She was transferred to a private care home 4 years ago, due to facility downsizing. They drove there the same day. A small building. Clean. Quiet. Room 104. They walked in, and there she was. Older. Thinner. Skin pale and papery. But the same eyes from the photograph. Lucy whispered, "Mom?" Evelyn looked up. At first, nothing. Just quiet breathing. Then, something shifted in her face. She blinked. Then whispered, in a voice dry as wind. "Lucy?" And for the first time in over 3 decades, she was seen. Not as Lillian. Not as a patient. But as Evelyn Rose Carter. They visited every weekend. Told her everything. How Lily had raised them. How she had died 2 years earlier, a sudden stroke. How Charles had passed without ever revealing the truth. How they had never known. And Evelyn smiled. Not out of joy. But relief. She didn't ask for apologies. She didn't need them. She had her name back. That was enough. Evelyn died peacefully 6 months later. In her sleep. The funeral was small. Just family. A few nurses. The headstone read, "Evelyn Rose Carter. Wife. Mother. Survivor." 1928 to 1985. Lucy arranged it all. Paid for the plot. Chose the words. She never told her own children the full story. Not yet. But sometimes, when they asked why she kept a certain photograph by her bed, a woman in a hospital gown, smiling faintly at the window, she said, "That's my mother. The real one. And one day, when they're ready, she'll tell them the rest." Some women die quietly. Some are erased, by time, by lies, by the men who claim to love them. But not Evelyn. Because in the end, the truth didn't need to scream. It just needed to last long enough to be found.